It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Mark Scaringi Show. The Mark Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Mark is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Mark Scaringi.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Mark Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And welcome to my listeners here on WHP 580 and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to listen to prior podcasts of the show, read my biweekly columns on Penn Live, or take a look at some great merchandise, check out our website at themarkscaringshow.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the Mark Scaringi Show on YouTube and follow me on Twitter at Mark Scaringi or on Facebook. And welcome to our friends on Facebook through Harrisburg 100 Facebook Live and the other Facebook channels we have running right now. Welcome to the show. Well, last week, all the major Democratic presidential candidates appeared on CNN's Climate Town Hall. It was 7 hours of various CNN talking head personalities interviewing the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates about climate change. In short, the carbon that is emitted into the atmosphere by burning fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas, and that the plants use, by the way, to create oxygen to provide the air that we breathe, is somehow going to kill us all. And it's going to kill us all in about 10 or 11 years. That's the uptake from the CNN Democratic Presidential Climate Town Hall. Our Democratic friends say we have got 10 or maybe 11 years to live. So they want the legal authority to commandeer and control every aspect of your life and our economy to save us from ourselves. No, it's not the plot of a new science fiction movie. It's the Green New Deal. And some reports estimate the Green New Deal, sponsored by the scientist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democratic congresswoman from from Brooklyn. Actually, she's not a scientist. She's a former bartender, although that's a mixologist, right? That's close to being a scientist. Anyway, her Green New Deal could cost up to $90 trillion in U.S. taxpayer dollars. A new study released by the Competitive Enterprise Institute and the Power of the Future found the average American household in Pennsylvania would be on the hook for more than $70,000 during the first year the plan was implemented. After the first year, families in Pennsylvania would likely be required to pay about $45,000 for the next 4 years and more than $37,000 from there on out to fully implement Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's The Green New Deal. Its plan is to eliminate coal, oil, and natural gas and replace it with renewables such as wind and solar. The idea is, of course, preposterous. Wind and solar produce only a small amount of the energy that we need to live our lives, and they come with their own negative consequences to the environment and cannot by any stretch of Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez's imagination replace fossil fuels. The plan is so ambitious and so disconnected from reality that it would make Joseph Stalin or Mao Zedong blush. And by the way, the politicians that are proposing this Green New Deal and the other proposals from the CNN Climate Town Hall debate of last week, they've run nothing in their lives. They've never run businesses. They haven't even run a lemonade stand. But the only thing they've run is run for office. That was what the CNN Climate Town Hall debate proposed by individuals who have never run anything but their mouths, apparently. Well, just a few days ago, on Thursday, Democrats had another debate, this one hosted by ABC News. Now, the moderators for that debate included the fair and unbiased and impartial former Democratic campaign aide and communications director for President Bill Clinton, George Stephanopoulos, and also Jorge Ramos, fair and balanced and unbiased. Is he? Ramos is an anchor at Univision. He's host for The Real America with Jorge Ramos, which airs on Facebook Watch. He promotes open borders, unlimited immigration. He thinks Donald Trump, America, and most Americans are racist. Jorge Ramos is a Mexican native and Mexican citizen. He's known as the Walter Cronkite of Latin America. And I'm not sure why a Mexican citizen is moderating a presidential debate in the United States. If you're known to be the Walter Cronkite of Latin America, maybe you should be moderating debates in Latin America. Nevertheless, we have Jorge Ramos interfering in our election, as the Democrats would say if he were a conservative, but of course they don't, because he supports the liberal narrative of the Democratic Party of today. Nevertheless, he was moderating the debate. And what did we hear from our Democratic friends on Thursday evening at the ABC News debate? Well, we heard a lot about gun control, universal background checks, gun registration, gun licensing, and yes, even finally, they've admitted to confiscation. We heard more about climate change that we heard at the CNN Climate Town Hall the week before, about how coal, oil, and natural gas producers need to be put out of business, and we need to end those energy sources. We heard about immigration, open borders, unlimited immigration, let anyone from anywhere in the world come here to seek asylum for any reason. We learned a lot about health care, Medicare for all, how Democrats plan to eliminate private health insurance and force us all into some sort of government program. Medicare for our senior citizens is, of course, already insolvent. It's got tens of millions of dollars in unfunded liabilities that we, the taxpayers, are going to have to pay for. But our Democratic presidential friends, they want to expand Medicare to include all of us. Of course, estimates are that will cost trillions of dollars over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. Our Democratic presidential candidates, they also want to cancel student loan debt. Well, that's about $1.5 trillion in student debt. Our Democratic friends, they just want to wipe it all out, wipe it away. It's gone. Now, of course, it's guaranteed. That debt is guaranteed by the federal government. That means it's guaranteed by you and me, the taxpayers. So the taxpayers will be on the hook for about $1.5 trillion if the Democrats get their way to cancel all student loan debt. Of course, we heard a lot about racism. That is it seems like it's the theme of the Democratic Party this election season. We've heard that America was founded upon not freedom, but racism and white supremacy. We heard that America is systemically and systematically, they use both of those words, systemically and systematically racist. And as Joe Biden said, there is institutional segregation in this country, which is, that's not quite right. So we have institutions, governments, churches, nonprofit organizations. They are institutional segregationists. That's not quite right. No one's quite sure what Joe Biden means at any given point in time. But in any event, that's kind of a quick summary of the issues that were discussed. We'll get into some of the others. But first, what do the polls say about who won and who lost? Well, 538.com, it came out with an immediate poll in the aftermath of the debate and declared the winner to be Elizabeth Warren. She was only one of four major candidates who received more people saying they're considering voting for her. The loser was Julian Castro. He lost favorability for what many Democrats say was an unfair attack on former Vice President Joe Biden. We'll talk more about that attack and the issues raised in the Democratic debate with ABC News. When we return from this brief commercial break, you're listening to The Mark Scaringi Show.
Now back to the Mark Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Mark Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We talk here about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And you're obviously tuning in on WHP 580 and iHeartRadio. And you can also tune in on our various Facebook Live programs. They all went down and we lost connection, but we're back up on most of them. So you can tune back into to Harrisburg 100 or the Mark Scaringi Show or my own Facebook, and you can comment live that way. So we apologize for that, but we're back up and running. And we're talking about the ABC News Democratic debate that occurred just this past Thursday evening and the major issues that were discussed. And we're talking about some of the winners and losers and how 538.com, which is a political analysis and polling site, they came up with the winner being Elizabeth Warren, the loser Julian Castro, because of the dispute or the interchange that he got into with the former Vice President Joe Biden, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Apparently, Biden slipped a bit as the one who is the most electable, but it wasn't much of a change. Elizabeth Warren rose in electability, so it looks like Warren did pretty well. I watched the most of the debate. I didn't really see Elizabeth Warren making a standout performance, but apparently by doing well and not saying anything disastrous, not making any gaffes, she rises in electability. People see her and compare her to Joe Biden, who at times can barely speak and is so gaffe-prone, it scares all of his campaign aides and the leadership of the Democratic Party. So compared to Biden, Elizabeth Warren looks good and rises in electability. Apparently, fewer people, according to the 538 poll, are considering voting for Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, that Kamala Harris, she had a little bit of a meteoric rise when in one of the earlier debates, she really took it to Joe Biden on his past support in laudatory words for his segregationist senators in the United States Senate who were friends of his. He bragged about working with segregationists. Joe Biden, when he was elected to the Senate in the mid-'70s, took a very hard line against busing. And busing, if you recall, in the 70s was a big program and policy of our liberal Democratic friends who wanted to bus the races into different communities in order to bring about a more diversified public education system. Joe Biden strongly opposed that. Kamala Harris, that was back in the 70s, Kamala Harris, in one of the earlier debates, essentially calls him a segregationist and a racist for doing so. She rises quickly in the polls, but then drops quickly in the polls and is really not one of the major contenders at this point. A little surprising for her. The man whose favorability went up significantly, according to the 538 poll, as a result of last Thursday's debate, is Beto, our friend Robert Francis O'Rourke. His favorability ratings increased significantly, and that's, of course, for his call for gun control and his condemnation of America as a racist country. But let's talk about that exchange between Julian Castro and former Vice President Joe Biden, and that's generated most of the attention and conversation by the talking heads and the political pundits in the media. So Julian Castro, by the way, is the former Secretary of Housing under former President Barack Obama. And Castro takes umbrage at Joe Biden constantly talking about and referring to his work with Barack Obama. Biden, of course, was Obama's vice president. Biden is coming into this election with hand in hand, arm in arm, as much as he can with Barack Obama. That's how Joe Biden, who has historically been a moderate, kind of sells himself to the left wing of the Democratic Party that is driving this primary debate. Julian Castro views himself as the real successor to Barack Obama, as the real leftist, and so he gets a little upset, a little hot around the collar, with Biden constantly referring to his work and his relationship with Barack Obama. So Julian Castro attacks Biden, and the exchange is on Biden's health insurance plan, his Medicare for All plan. And Julian Castro famously kind of launched into Biden saying, "Are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?" And that has been played over and over again on the CNN and ABC News and all of the other channels that have been reviewing the debate. Well, the issue, of course, healthcare. Castro accused Biden of not knowing what's in his own health insurance plan. Castro claims that Biden's plan would leave 10 million Americans uncovered. Castro claimed that Biden said 2 minutes ago that, quote, that they would have to buy in. Now, I assume Castro meant this is proof that Biden's plan leaves 10 million uninsured and that Biden is mean and uncaring because he makes the uninsured buy into his plan. And Julian Castro was criticizing Biden's plan because it does not automatically enroll people in a Medicare for all. Now, Biden countered by saying, they would have to buy in if they could afford it. I guess the implication there, and later on he clarified that anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in Medicare, in the Medicare type option we have. Actually, Biden was probably correct. It seems like Biden understood his plan and got it right. It's just he's so confusing when he speaks. And he confused the issue by using the phrase automatically enrolled. And automatic enrollment is not the same thing as buy-in. If you have to buy in, this is what Julian Castro was explaining that night and the next morning in the talk shows. If you have to buy into the Biden plan, it's not automatic enrollment. All right, but in any event, it appears Biden was actually correct about his plan and Castro was wrong. Yet that didn't stop Castro from taking his shot at Biden. Castro clearly was going after Biden's old age, according to some. Joe Biden, by the way, is 76 years old. If elected, he would be 78 years old by the time of his swearing in, making him the oldest person to occupy the White House. And Biden, he's an easy target. His speech is slurred. He garbles his words. He mumbles. His dentures actually started falling out of his mouth during the debate. I don't know if you caught that, but Google that one. He's trying to talk and his dentures are coming out. He begins a sentence, then he cuts himself off in mid-sentence. He changes topic, talks about something else entirely. He's forgetful. He tells exaggerated stories about himself, can't remember the facts, mixes and mashes his stories, gets different people in the stories. I mean, he's all over the place. He is a huge target. And Julian Castro he was obviously prepared to hit Biden on his memory and his forgetfulness because it's everywhere. It's every time Joe Biden opens his mouth. So Castro was prepared for this in advance, and he took his shot. It's just that Castro's allegation about Biden that he didn't understand his own plan turned out to be inaccurate. So it was a big swing and a miss for Julian Castro, who, by the way, was standing on a stool. I don't know if you saw that, so that behind the podium, so that he appeared taller than he is. And a lesson to political candidates: don't stand on stools when your opponents are not. Just be who you are and be the size you are, and be accurate when you try to slam a fellow candidate. So Julian Castro, a big swing and a miss, got tons of attention, but got a lot of bad publicity. A lot of the Democratic leadership are upset with him for taking on Joe Biden. Many are saying it was ageism, as Ana Navarro at CNN, the fake Republican. They always call her in the title to whenever they introduce her, she's always the Republican or a Republican analyst. Really? I mean, she's a liberal Democrat. In any event, so Castro taking some heat on the big exchange with Joe Biden. Okay, one of the other big issues of the Democratic presidential debate of Thursday on ABC News was gun control. And this, to me, was actually a good thing that came out of the debate on gun control. In my view, the Democrats' gig is up. Yes, they are coming to take our guns. I mean, how many times have we gun owners and supporters and defenders of the Second Amendment, how many times have we been told by liberals, well, no one's coming to take your guns, as if we're rubes from the hinterlands, and they're the enlightened ones who are saying, no, calm down, no one's coming to take your guns. Of course, we knew that they were full of it. We knew all along that our liberal friends, they have a visceral hatred for guns, for all guns. They want them to be removed, eradicated from our society, all of them, except, of course, the government who protects our democratic politicians with armed security guards, armed police officers. So, of course, the government will continue to have all the guns. Our democratic liberal friends, they love the government. They want the government to be armed, but not so much the American people. And in the past, whenever our liberal friends would say, no one's coming to take your guns. Calm down. Our only response was, well, historically, let's look back at the history books and remember Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Vladimir Lenin. When dictators took power in various countries around the world, those dictators, they put into effect various gun control and gun confiscation plans and policies to essentially disarm their own people so that their own people couldn't use their guns to shoot and kill the dictators. And we got into this like historical debate that it wasn't current. No one really understood it, and so we kind of lost that argument. But now we have Robert Francis O'Rourke, a liberal Democratic Irish American who's pretending to be Hispanic, and he goes by the name of Beto. Now, Beto was the darling of the Dems and the media, for a party that talks about diversity, by the way, as if diversity is the holy grail and will lead our nation to salvation. Beto is as a white male as they come. He looks a little like RFK to our liberals, who is a hero of our liberal friends, and liberals talk a good game about diversity, but they love their tall, wispy-haired white males such as Beto O'Rourke. And now Beto went from gracing the cover of glossy liberal magazines as the second coming of JFK, RFK, or even Jesus Christ. He got that attention and those platitudes, remember, because he took on the bête noire of the left, Ted Cruz, in the 2016 Texas Senate election. He lost and immediately decided to run for president, but as soon as he jumped into the presidential race, after a brief splash, he quickly fell to the bottom. The American people, even Democrats, noticed really there's no there with Beto. He's just an empty vessel through which our liberal Dem friends project the ideal of what their candidates will look like. But that's really all he's got. He's got his looks. When he opens his mouth, he speaks in that halting manner as if he's grasping for each word before he utters it. He uses his hands. He's exhausting to watch while he gives speeches. So he has been desperate to get some attention. And on Thursday night at the Democratic debate, he certainly did that. We'll talk more about Beto O'Rourke and his gun confiscation plan when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to The Mark Scaringi Show.
Now, more of Mark Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Mark Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. And this is where we talk about the important political, legal, and issues of the day. I'm a little bit stuttering here. I was listening to Don't Fear the Reaper. Who sings that song? Oh, my goodness. There was a great SNL skit starring Will Ferrell. That was just you got to Google that and watch that. A Blue Oyster Cult with Don't Fear the Reaper, and Google Saturday Night Live and watch Will Ferrell do a terrific job spoofing that. Anyway, we're talking about serious issues of the day, right? Serious political and legal issues of the day. We're talking about the Democratic debate on CNN. And Beto O'Rourke, whose star quickly fell as soon as he jumped into the presidential race, was in desperate need of some attention. And boy, did he get it on Thursday night at the debate. On the question of gun control, he was pushed about his gun confiscation plan, and he answered triumphantly, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. And my friends, that's it. He said it. He finally gave the correct answer. He gave the answer conservatives knew was and is at the core of every gun control proposal, and that's gun confiscation. And now we conservatives, we have all the proof in the world to defend our response that at the core, the end game of gun control is gun confiscation. And that's according to the Dems' popular, their dream candidate, Beto O'Rourke. And even President Trump, who at times doesn't seem to understand or appreciate truly what the Second Amendment means, and he gets a little wobbly on the Second Amendment every time there's a mass shooting. He said in response to a question about whether some sort of gun control measure in Congress is going to pass this fall, he said, well, it depends on if Democrats want to take your guns away. If this is a movement by the Democrats to take your guns away, it's never going to happen. So President Trump picked up on this, and he knows how politically powerful Beto's statement was and how it is going to help galvanize Americans across the country to oppose Democrats in the fall election, because now the cat is out of the bag. The gig is up. Democrats are going for our guns. We've always known that to be true. They've always denied it. But now the truth is right there for the world to see. And Beto has now taken the Democratic Party far from where it very recently was, at least publicly, on this issue. Remember in 2016, when Hillary was running for president, her spokesman said, oh, of course Hillary does not support national mandatory gun buyback programs, including those modeled after Australia's program. She was just discussing voluntary buyback programs, which are drastically different than what occurs in Australia and are regularly run by cities across America. That was Hillary Clinton's spokesperson in 2016, saying that, oh no, Hillary is not for mandatory gun buyback. She's not for mandatory gun confiscation. Well, now, just a few years later, Beto O'Rourke, one of the leading Democratic presidential candidates, is for it. And by the way, notice none of those other Democratic presidential candidates on the debate stage came out and objected to Beto O'Rourke's call for gun confiscation. So, my friends, it is there. It is front and center in the Democratic platform for what they want to do to our country and to your Second Amendment rights if elected. We'll talk. I want to talk a little bit more about this, but we'll open up the phone lines at this time if you want to call in and tell us what you think about the Democratic debate on Thursday evening, the ABC News hosted by George Stephanopoulos and Jorge Ramos. What your thoughts are on the Democratic performance, on the policy proposals they've come up with, and whether you think they're good or bad for our country, or tell me who you think won the debate, who lost the debate. You're welcome to call in 717-540-0580. That's 717-540-0580. And we have the various Facebook pages up and running again, so you're welcome to comment live. We'll take some calls. We have Joe from Pembroke. You're on the Mark Scarinci Show.
Hey, Mark. Thank you very much for taking my call. Excellent show once again. Great illustrations. Have you ever thought about? My God, this is the Federalists versus the Whigs, and last I heard, Burr and Hamilton went at it. Still awaiting, as an American, wondering what's going to happen with Brexit. But excuse me, with all due respect, sir, and you're lovely. Hey, it's time for patriots to stand up. Good day, sir. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Well, thank you, Joe from Pembroke. Appreciate those interesting and wise and very deep comments. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to get into the Alexander Hamilton versus Aaron Burr debate. We'll have to have a special show dedicated to that and the split, the Whigs splitting off from the Federalists of many, many years ago. Probably we're a little too deep for today's discussion, but the point is, this is Joe from Pembroke is pointing out, this is a big deal. That when Beto O'Rourke finally proclaims what you and I know has always been the end game for our Democratic friends, they want our guns. This is a split, and that's what Joe from Pembroke is talking about. That perhaps we'll have a split in the Democratic Party, and perhaps on this issue of guns, this will be the trigger. We shall see. On our side, the Republican side, we've had a huge kind of metamorphosis in our party because of Donald Trump. Remember, for decades in the modern era, in recent decades, the Republican Party has been purportedly for, quote, free trade, end quote, and the Republican Party has really been for open immigration under George Bush and George H.W. Bush and even the great Ronald Reagan. The Republican Party has also been, in recent decades, the party that used the U.S. military to go around the world in search of monsters to destroy, an interventionist foreign policy that was based upon the moral worldview of U.S. leaders instead of what was in the national security interests of the American people. So on those three big issues, on trade, immigration, foreign policy, that have been bedrock principles of the Republican Party for the past several decades, Donald Trump kind of took us by storm and transformed the party fundamentally on those three core issues. Now, under Donald Trump, the Republican Party is back to its original position on those three main issues. Remember, the Republican Party was founded to abolish slavery, and we Republicans should be congratulated today instead of condemned as white supremacist racists. It's our political party, by the way, that abolished slavery, fought the Civil War, defeated the South, freed the slaves. Pretty good. We've done some pretty good work, we Republicans. But anyway, it was also founded on the tariff system. It was a non-foreign interventionist foreign policy, an America first foreign policy, and a party with regard to American first on immigration had a view that immigration had to be something that would promote American interests as opposed to just opening up the floodgates. So we've had a big transformation in the Republican Party, and perhaps Joe from Pembroke is saying, this is the watershed moment in the Democratic Party where Beto O'Rourke is going to take the left and they're going to go down the path of gun control. If they do so, the Democratic Party, they're going to get wiped out in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Michigan, and Wisconsin, the way Trump beat them because of Trump's position on trade. The Dems are going to lose more and more states if they openly embrace gun confiscation. Well, let's take some more calls. We've got lots of calls coming in. We have Brian from Marysville. You're on the Mark Scaringi Show. What do you think about the Democratic debate? How'd they do?
Well, Mark, I really honestly tell you, I believe that President Trump won the debate.
Ah, okay.
Okay. I mean, in theory, he won the debate because that was the first time that they actually were transparent about their agenda and so bold about it.
That's exactly right.
The one that I'm concerned about is Elizabeth Warren, okay? I believe that she is another hot-head-tempered, mean, wicked person like Hillary, but she has really turned chameleon and starting this nice side of her, this calm side of her, the more intelligent approach to things, but I think it's just a facade. I really think she's a conniving, backstabbing. She's in the same politics, in the same arena with Hillary.
Well, I'll tell you, and I've got about 1 minute before the next commercial break, and I am with you. I fear Elizabeth Warren the most. I think that she is the most potent and the most powerful candidate they have. She is a true believer. She is a true believing Marxist-Leninist left-wing liberal. And compare her, Bernie Sanders is not going to make it. He's peaked, and in fact, he peaked in 2016. So I don't think he's going to make it. And you compare Warren to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is talking like a leftist today, but he doesn't even know what the heck he's talking about most of the time. He's just a career politician. All he wants is to be loved. He wants to be Uncle Joe, the good guy, the lovable guy, and he just wants your adulation, and he wants to stay relevant and stay in power. I imagine he'll probably moderate all of these positions that he's taken in the primary. I imagine he'll moderate them in the fall. But Warren's a true believer. I mean, she's a Leninist. If she gets power, this country is in real jeopardy. And Brian from Marysville, thanks for the call. Appreciate that. We've got to take a brief commercial break. You're listening to the Mark Scaringi Show.
Now, more of Mark Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Mark Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We're talking today about the ABC News Democratic presidential debate of just a few days ago. Elizabeth Warren declared by the 538.com poll as the winner, and Julian Castro declared as the loser. We're talking now about Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke, the most Irish-American Hispanic in America today, and Beto's call for gun confiscation and how the cat is finally out of the bag. One of our prior callers mentioned that was that Brian from Marysville saying that Donald Trump won the debate. He's exactly right. Donald Trump won the debate when Beto O'Rourke uttered those, which will now be infamous words. Hell yeah, we're going to confiscate your guns. And it's going to have a real effect on this election. Trust me, President Trump will tweet and retweet that from now until Election Day. Now, of course, Beto's policy is unconstitutional. The President of the United States cannot ban or confiscate certain firearms. The AR-15 is the most popular rifle in America today by a considerable margin. There are around 15 million of them in the country. Because they are popular, they are clearly protected by the in common use standard that was laid out in the terrific Supreme Court decision, D.C. v. Heller, of just a few years ago, where the United States Supreme Court, for the first time in the history of our country, declared there is the Second Amendment protects your individual, not collective, individual right to keep and bear arms, including the right to keep and bear arms that are in common use. There are 15 million AR-15s. It's the most popular rifle in America. So by the Supreme Court's own standard set forth in D.C. v. Heller, there is no Beto gun confiscation. It would not withstand constitutional challenge. Now, that's if we have Supreme Court justices who actually interpret the law correctly. You never know with Justice Roberts in there, with our Chief Justice. He's a little wobbly and could go other way. But Beto's policy should be struck down by the Supreme Court if he ever attempts to put it in effect. But Beto's policy is really not a policy. It's just rhetoric. It's perception and posturing more than anything else. Beto will never be able to confiscate tens of millions of AR-15s and AK-47s in America. If he tries, there will be war. Beto, as president, cannot commandeer state and local police forces. He'll have to use the Army to do it if he wants to try to confiscate 15 million AR-15s. But the Army cannot be used for domestic law enforcement, so he's basically stuck. He has no ability to actually carry out the gun confiscations. In an interview the morning after, when he was asked if federal agents would come to homes of American gun owners to confiscate their guns, Beto said, "No, it's expecting Americans to follow the law. I know they will." Well, trust me, Beto, Americans are not going to follow an unconstitutional law that you have in mind that confiscates AR-15s, that confiscates what you view as what you call assault weapons. Americans are not going to adhere to such a patently and grossly unconstitutional law. American gun owners will fight back with those very same AR-15s and AK-47s. There will be violence. This is a terrible proposal of Beto O'Rourke. It would be catastrophic for our country if he or some Democratic Congress would try to carry this out. It would cause mass armed violence by the American people who would be defending their Second Amendment to keep and bear arms. So he said in that same interview that I'm going to work with law enforcement to make sure that we implement this in the most effective way. O'Rourke said when asked how he would deal with people who did not willingly surrender their firearms. Now, as I say, I'm not sure what law enforcement Beto is talking about. Beto is not the police chief of the local municipality. The federal government cannot just commandeer the state police or your local police chief. That's not the way our federal system is set up. And no law enforcement officials, trust me, they do not want to be involved in gun confiscation. They don't want to get shot by a gun owner. So Beto is all wet and dangerously wrong on this issue. And by the way, and I know we've got some callers in the phone bank there, and we'll get to them in a second. But I wanted to say point out one more thing about the Beto interview, and you can Google this. Beto's interview the morning after the debate in which he declared, "Hell yeah, we're going to come and take your guns." Beto said, "If you agree that it is a potential instrument of terror, if you agree these sensational mass shootings cause fear and terror throughout our country, then why would you leave 10 million of them, AR-15s, on the street?" That's his statement. So in short, because Beto O'Rourke and liberals are terrified by AR-15s, the guns themselves terrorize liberals. Because the guns terrorize liberals, the guns should be declared illegal and should be confiscated. All 10 million of them. That's the logic of Beto O'Rourke. Remember, if you agree that it is a potential instrument of terror, well, isn't every firearm a potential instrument of terror? If you think that if you're terrified by them. So here we have our Beto O'Rourke and our liberal Democratic friends who are just frightened by, they're terrorized by a certain type of firearm. A certain type of semi-automatic firearm scares and terrorizes liberals. So through their terror, through their frightenedness, through their fear, which is what? Emotion. Because of their emotional reaction to the look and style of a particular firearm, our liberal friends want to ban them and confiscate them. That's in essence what we have. We'll open the phone lines, we'll take some calls. We have Joe from Chambersburg. You're on the Mark Scaringi Show.
Mark, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. What do you think? How did the Democrats do in their debate?
Just predictable. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, it's like watching a race. They're all in kind of the same pack. They're all trying to break free from the pack. That's Beto. Never let a crisis go to waste.
He did say that. That's right.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you talked about this earlier, but he claims that Donald Trump was this man's inspiration. Yeah.
For the gun confiscation?
No, for the guy who did the shooting.
Oh, for the El Paso shooter. Oh, yeah. Beto has said
that made me cringe when I heard him say that. Like Donald Trump inspired this man to shoot.
It's horrifying, and Beto has said that repeatedly. Beto has said during the debate that our president is a white supremacist and a racist. Kamala Harris, a Democratic senator from California, said about the El Paso shooting that President Trump may not have pulled the trigger, but he supplied the bullets. I mean, these are horrific statements being made by leading Democratic elected officials about our president that is stoking so much resentment by those who support the president, who support the Constitution, who support his America First policies. They're really taking us down a dangerous path.
They absolutely are, and I mean, I don't know how you categorize this type of speech. I think it borders on I don't know. It doesn't end well. I mean, people take it seriously. Well, what are they going to think?
Well, you're exactly right. That's right, Joe from Chambersburg. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate that. We are running out of time. We just have about a minute left for the show today. And the takeaway would be that the Beto O'Rourke and the Democrats during their presidential debate have really kind of given the president a huge opening with Beto O'Rourke's call for gun confiscation. The president is going to use this as a hammer and hammer the heads of not just Beto O'Rourke, but all of those Democratic presidential candidates, and none of whom, by the way, opposed or objected to Beto's call that is, hell yeah, I'm coming after your guns. And I can write the radio ad for that right now, and we'll put it all throughout WHP and iHeartRadio, and will help the re-election of our president. That's all the time we have. I want to thank you all for listening here to the Mark Scaringi Show.